Hey,
No.
okay, we are live. Thank you for hanging in. A little bit of a technical issue. Mark Lettieri is my guest today, and my camera is now doing autofocus. I don't know what's going on. So, hey, everyone, thanks for coming today and joining, and thanks for hanging out on uh, waiting. Yeah,
Saturday.
waiting for this all to work out. Okay, so, all right. Mark Lettieri, thank you for joining today on the Brooklyn Lockdown.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks,
Super
Jeff.
stoked.
My
Yeah,
pleasure.
super stoked to have you here. So as usual, everybody say hi. We got questions coming in. Phil, the moderator, is going to be helping out.
Bill.
And any questions you have for Mark, just type them in the form of a question. Just to start off, if you look in the section or the in the beginning on my website there, I'm sorry, I'm a little frazzled. You just the last 15 minutes of me trying to reset up everything again from scratch. It's a little brain little frazzling. Okay, so there is links to all the stuff from Mark. You've got your jam play course. We got the tip jar out, which will of course help. And we're going to talk about music and what's going on with you. And so we're going to start off with Mark doing some playing, and we're going to ask some questions.
Yeah.
So take it away,
Here, let me
Mark.
get my system.
No, no, no. Mine's working perfectly. You need yours to just.
Let me- Here comes the speaker, so you might want to mute your mic.
Okay, I'm going to mute my mic.
Okay. And I will remove my headphones. Put the headphones back on and turn this off. There we go. You hear me?
Yeah. Excellent, man. Thank you. What tune was that?
That was a song called Point Is. Saturday morning ballad for kids.
What's that? Saturday morning ballad for the kids. Awesome, cool. So, do you want to talk a little about what you were thinking on that tune, or what maybe some of the changes were, or what the inspiration was for that?
Yeah, sure, man. Well, it kind of happens. It's one of those songs where different parts of it happened at different times, and I had to kind of figure out if they were all going to be related. I wrote the song kind of as like a, just like a lullaby or something for my daughter, who hadn't been born at the time when I wrote it, but I wanted to have something kind of announce the arrival of that big change in my life. So there is kind of a symbolism with that, kind of how I wanted to sort of get all the pieces together. It sort of had to feel like, this new thing, this kid coming into my life, this whole big change, and it's just a love song to her, really. But it started out just with this. I think I improvised this chord melody one day, which is just a. It's just a minor pentatonic melody, G minor pentatonic.
Really?
Really.
Cool.
I guess you want to think of it as G minor pentatonic, and I ended up with these chords on top of it. So you have E flat major 7, like D suspended with a suspended 7, like C sharp 9, strum 11, and then C major 7. And so I was like, well, that sounds really nice. I need to somehow, that needs to happen in a tune of mine at some point.
Right.
And then,
can I ask a question? Yeah, how did you? Okay, so when you're harmonizing that, what are you thinking? Or did you know what chords you wanted to? Did you hear the chords, or did you work them out? Or are they diatonic? Because people always want to know, like,
I mean, it's not really diatonic. Right. It's sort of, you can think of it as either going between the key of E flat major and C major, or you can think of it as going between G minor and G major.
Okay.
Depending on how you look at it, sort of like, if you look at this as something that would keep us in G minor, right?
Right.
So you can think of C as the 4 of G major. So it sort of modulates, really, but it may have almost been one of those happy accidents.
No, it's cool. Yeah, sometimes that's the way it happens.
You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah, absolutely.
I think the more I look at it, the more I realize that the reason why I liked it is because it sounds like there's a G minor pentatonic melody in there that I harmonized. But I think I was probably just maybe consciously trying to pivot off of one note with a couple of chords. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, if I took G and wanted to keep that as the main melody note.
Right.
Right. There's a million options with G at the top, right? And so that was probably what I was thinking. G. Let's change keys now. Right. So we end up with an A sharp on the top or B flat. Back to G at the top, right? I like trying to find exciting ways of playing over very simple melodies. Even if it's just like one note. Like we took 2 chords out of got 2 chords just with the G at the top both, right? Actually, we ended up with 3.
Okay.
It's 3 different chords, all with a G at the top.
Got it. Right.
So, except this one, actually, you know what? I'm lying to you. I think this one I did put a G at the top. This one actually has a F at the top, right? And then, so the chorus kind of then alternates between those 2 major 7 shapes, a minor, third, hard, right? And And then the verse was something I was kind of practicing. Just these like ninth extensions. And then it's actually what I'm really doing is playing like a G Lydian arpeggio, but then at the top I go to E, so it almost makes it like an E minor 6. So we end up with like kind of, but it's not that ugly sounding.
Gotcha.
And then the melody just follows this E minor pentatonic. And then to get to this chord, I sort of just took like a very typical kind of R&B maneuver where you end up with like a minor 6 or a minor chord down to a half diminished chord, a whole 1.5 steps below to our C major, right? So still kind of now we're in the key of G major still. So that's the verse, and then it just modulates to C for the second verse, and I changed some of the melodies around. But yeah, I wanted like a mid-tempo guitar ballad that had some R&B flavor with a little bit of harmony action going on, and that groove real nice for my kid.
That's awesome.
That's kind of how it happened. You know, it's funny, man. It's like I'm. If it sounds like I'm struggling to explain this, it's probably because I've never thought about it like
Of
that.
course, no, it makes perfect sense. Yeah, of course.
I mean? So it's like, well, I guess I'm actually, I'm not one of those. I'm not a player that writes from a theory perspective. I'll go back and try to understand that later.
Right. Yeah.
You know, I'm interested in I'm interested in if it sounds good or not, and then I'll wonder if it works later.
Sure. Sorry. I'm sorry if everybody's looking around. There's some echo. I had to take care of it. So.
Oh no, it's okay.
So
Sorry,
it's
man.
me. So if
All
people
good.
got the headphones on, somehow you were feeding back. You weren't a couple minutes ago.
Okay.
So you're good now from what I'm hearing. So unfortunately, if people see me fuddling around here, it's because I'm just trying to figure this out. Because everything was fine until you go live, and then it's not fine. Okay.
We'll do it live. Right?
But that's the way I think it's really cool because you're just thinking about the melody and you're letting it take you with you.
It's all about the melodic concept,
Yeah.
man. Like, and you know, the melodies have to, you know, in this case, when I write melodies, especially with this tune, I sort of anchored both verses with this motif.
Right.
So they both start with that. One's in G, one's in C. And then there's like the secondary melodies
Yeah.
that are different each time. And that's kind of by design. I like a little bit of forward progression, almost like lyrics, right? And like, you know, like Donald Fagen is my favorite lyricist. You know what I mean? And it's like each verse and the way that they write is like a little bit different. It's a little bit farther on in the story.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Any great lyric we like it to kind of carry on the.
Well, it's great because you're thinking about it as actually lyrically. Not
well.
I mean, there's melodically,
yeah,
but you're also thinking almost like what I'm hearing is you're thinking about the lyrics as well, but you're not using lyrics.
I find, and maybe it's just, you know, and I'm not saying like I'm a great melodic lyricist or whatever, but I try to pattern my melodies off of as though I'm reading a story.
Yeah.
You know, and information is continuing on and it's sort of building information that way. Sometimes I'll repeat a melody and it'll be identical. You know, or maybe as far as the note concept, maybe I'll change a couple things rhythmically around. Like I have other tunes, like there's a song called Goon Squad that I play all the time, and the melody is this sort of like B flat diminished thing. But the notes are the same every time. I just kind of rephrase it rhythmically every time it gets to the verse. So I try to write melodies that where I'm not just totally duplicating the thing every time. And that's just the way I look at it. You know, there's no right or wrong way.
Well, it's like motivic development. You want to keep, you know, your classical music, you know, Debussy, you hear it's the theme, and then you vary upon the theme and make it grow. And it becomes because if not repeating the same melody all the time, it's going to be kind of. Now, a bunch of questions that I want to ask you because now I got you right here. Yeah, is first of all, I want to start with some of your influences, and I think I know some that I can guess, but I wanted to have you talk about it as opposed to go, no, I'm not influenced by him at all.
Well, you know, sometimes that's cool, man. I mean that particular tune. It has there's probably some Eric Johnson in there. There's probably some Jonathan Dubose in there. He's a really well respected gospel guitar player that I checked out quite.
Can you
a
talk
bit.
about him for a minute? Because I'm completely unfamiliar.
Yeah, man. He's in Connecticut, and he's played on a bajillion records, a bajillion gospel records. The Hawkins family, all kinds of up to contemporary stuff. I first heard him because he had done some guitar parts on a record by this artist named Myron Butler, who's a gospel artist here in Dallas. That I joined this band and was playing and had to learn a bunch of Jonathan's guitar parts. So Myron was like, "Well, man, you need to. If you like this style of playing, like he's the guy."
Right.
And so I got a Jonathan Dubose record called "Healing of the Hymns," and it's a lot of it's kind of solo guitar stuff, and then stuff with the band. But I just really loved the way he checked out chord voicings and put them all together.
Can you give an example?
And yeah, I'll see if I can remember how to play some of his. Well, let's see. That's totally wrong, but it's sort of like.
But yeah, it's totally cool. Yeah.
Like he had all these really nice flavors of major 7 chords mixed with this chord.
Yeah, I love that chord.
You can think of it as like an add 2 with the 3.
Can you just
bass,
tilt your guitar to the hair so we can see this? Yeah, show that one if you could. That's really cool.
So this would be like it's like an A2.
Right.
A2, but you put the C sharp in the bottom, and it functions as a really nice minor 3 chord just with a raised fifth. So instead of something that's sort of straight down the middle, you have this nice piece of suspended.
Right. It can serve a number of purposes. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I remember hearing Jonathan do that for the first time, and I just went, "Oh, like
what is that? I need to know that."
I just like, what is this? Angels coming down, something." And he's a lot of what you heard me do, that sort of pivoting on one string.
Yeah.
That's very gospel Jonathan keyboard organ motion.
So he's a keyboard player.
And he's a guitar player.
All right.
But a lot of guitar players in gospel music are always, well, I shouldn't say, I don't want to generalize, but like there's definitely an overlap as far as chord voicings for sure. And a lot of that kind of sort of counterpoint stuff and harmonic movement, it's doing this.
Yeah.
So when I heard Jonathan do that, it was like, wow, this sounds like an organ to me. It didn't feel like a guitar necessarily. It felt like an organ movement or something. So that kind of style really stuck with me. And this was years ago. This was 2007.
Wow.
So it's been kind of ingrained in a bit of my style for a while now. And thankfully, I've gotten to meet Jonathan and play with him.
Oh, cool. Which is great.
Sweetest. Yeah, he's the sweetest, coolest guy. And I was like, man, I stole a lot of stuff from you. And he was like, good.
Yeah, excellent. Because he's probably thinking I stole it from whoever he stole it.
Sure. Yeah, who knows? I'm sure. Yeah, we all have influence.
I'm all wrapped up here.
So,
who else do you hear? I'm trying to think about.
I mean, there's probably some Michael Landau in there, some Steve Lukather, Jeff Beck for sure.
Now I hear some Wayne Cranston you're playing at times too.
Yeah, there's a lot of Wayne Cranston there too, especially stuff that's a little bit on the up tempo side.
The really tight rhythmic thing, that. Yeah.
He was another one of those players that I was fortunate enough to hear at a young enough age to where I got it, like really kind of soaked it in. Just hearing that, I was like, gosh, this guy's playing percussion on a guitar.
Yeah.
But not
of course,
doing that. I mean, he's just so syncopated.
I mean, I was fortunate enough to take some lessons with Wayne many years ago. I used to have a steady gig at the 55 bar for years, and so he used to play there Thursday nights. I was there on Friday nights, so it was kind of fun. We'd see each other quite a bit, and it's just absolutely astounding,
He really changed a lot of stuff for me in my playing. And, so it's funny now when I go to write my own music, it's like I hear all these different things. It's so many. It's this gospel chord stuff. It's this Wayne Cranston syncopated stuff. It's this rock thing in the middle or whatever, and I try to figure out a way to put it all together so hopefully it still sounds like me.
Well, I think you've clearly what I love about your guitar playing, besides it's being your guitar playing, besides being really amazing and spectacular, which I think the harmonic stuff, but you're really great at mixing all those things. So I hear all these influences, but I think you've melded it. I know you've melded into your own thing. So what I love about your tunes is, well, you got great compositions too. So you put a lot of work into the songs, which to me is a lot of times guitar players, tunes can be vehicles for soloing.
Sure.
And I think you really successfully avoid that, which is awesome. Sure.
Thanks.
Man.
Well, it's like when I go to record the stuff, I try to make sure that the solo section is more or less set,
right?
Because I don't want that. I just want it to be another part of the song. I don't necessarily want it to be the centerpiece of the composition. For me, the verses, the the hook or whatever, the chorus, the groove, that's really, for me, if those three things are together, the solo is just like another piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
And live we'll stretch it out and make it a little bit more, jazz fusion, Odyssey kind of thing if we want to. We don't always do that, but. What's interesting about writing instrumental guitar music, especially if, as we all do, we have lots of influences, is like figuring out a way to take those influences without it leaning in one direction over another. Like what I try to avoid is being like, this is the song that was totally influenced by this thing, and that's the only thing you're going to hear in it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like if I do something that has like a country bend to it, I don't want it to just sound like I'm trying to do a country song.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like
exactly
I want it to have that flavor, but I don't want it to be like overtly like, and now check out my country ability.
Right.
Like I don't care about it, that, but it's hard to do because you don't want to end up with a record that sounds like a business card.
It seems like gratuitous when you do that. You know what I mean? So
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, sorry, people are texting you all like, ask this. Okay. Sorry, I get overwhelmed. Okay. Sorry, man. This is all new.
But yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of for personal introspection to kind of like tackle things that are stylistically diverse with and still maintain your identity.
Yes, for sure.
And of course, all of my favorite players are people that can do that.
Yeah, and it's hard because sometimes I think. For me, and what I hear you saying too as well, like you play these things, and you in your head you kind of know where they came from, and then they could be totally yours at this point, and then you don't know exactly, So it's always interesting. Someone says, and they say like, oh, I heard this in your playing, and you're like, really? I guess.
Well, I mean that's fun. Sometimes people they're like, oh, this is totally influenced by so and so, and it's an artist I've never really checked out. And so you're like, well, oh, cool. Like, I'll take, that's great because now you're hearing something that I didn't even hear. So.
I remember when somebody said to me, like, I could tell you listen to a lot of Robert Fripp. And I was like, really? Okay.
Yeah,
I love King Crimson, but I've never considered that to be any of my guitar playing, but it's pretty cool. So let's talk about, okay, so you're obviously your work with Snarky Puppy, and then you've been doing a lot of your solo records now. And I want you to talk a little bit about that because how many, you put out 2 this year, was it, or 2 last year?
Yeah, I did. Well, in 2019, I put out 2. I put out one in March and then one in October. Right. And the one in March was sort of like another world that I live in, which is this baritone guitar funk stuff. And so that was the record in March. It was called Deep, the baritone session.
Okay, cool.
It's like making
Yeah. And those are those great, like you put those clips on Instagram all the time. You just kind of playing those, and it's really cool.
Yeah, it was like, it started off as thanks, man. It started off as like a Facebook post, Instagram post thing. And the more I did it, the more people were responding to it. And I just thought, I think people just were like, hey, so when's your record coming out? And I was like, oh man, this is just for social media shits and giggles or whatever. And then I was like, wait a minute. No, that's dumb. Maybe you've stumbled upon something that people are responding to, and you need to listen to them. So I turned it into a record, and that's kind of what I'm working on now during our quarantine time is getting the ideas for the next one. And then the second record was what I Point Is was from the song I played earlier. The record's called Things of That Nature. And that's more the traditional kind of Mark Lettieri guitar instrumental record, like I've done prior. That's the music that I perform live mostly, and with my trio or my quartet. And so I guess I was like super creative in 2018 and just thought I would put out 2 records.
Great. Now, a question: when you say like the short things you're talking about, the baritone guitar, can you talk about? I'm always curious how people write. Obviously you have. How do you compose some of those things? Is it on the instrument first, or do you like set it to a drum groove, or what are you thinking? Because I always find it really fascinating when people talk about that.
A lot of the baritone stuff was internal in that I heard some sort of groove or riff or pattern, and I was like, okay, let's grab a guitar and see what happens now. Like, just I'm out in the backyard mowing the lawn or something, and I'm like hearing it.
Right. There's a sort of groove going. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I got to mow the thing and then run in the back row, get back to the studio and lay it.
Honey, half the lawn is cut. What are you doing?
Like, I'm busy. I'm out.
The neighbors.
So that's a lot of that stuff was kind of written that way with a groove in mind, a drum beat or just some kind of a syncopation that I didn't like have notes for necessarily, and then I would kind of work that out. Which was kind of why it sort of worked for social media in a sense, because they were short compositions. I mean, they had like 2 sections. There was like an A section, a B section, and some kind of like vamp out funk groove section. Sure.
So then how did you expand those? Because that's a great thought that I'm having right now. Yeah, how did you build those out?
In some cases, I just kind of either left them alone and just elongated them, or just figured out a place where I could write something else.
Yeah.
I think the one that kind of changed the most was one called Gigantactus. I named them all after deep sea fish. I don't know.
Yeah, why not? What are you going to name them?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. What do you name instrumental songs?
Yeah, of course. Like an instrumental funky thing. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. So now, really all I had was. It sounds kind of cheeseball on a clean, not baritone guitar, but
sounds good to me.
So I had that riff, and I had like the bridge. But I didn't have anything else, so I wrote 2 verses. Because it was just a lot of this.
Right, which works great for 60 seconds, but yeah.
Sure. So it was the bridge, and then there was a solo section. And I was like, okay, this needs some kind of a verse. So I wrote this sort of like syncopated rhythm guitar, there's 2 verses that are this kind of syncopated rhythm guitar part. It's not really a melody. It's like a written out rhythm melody. I don't mean written out.
Right, no, I know. Yeah, you composed. It's composed, yes. Yeah.
I planned it. And so that one that one sort of expanded. There was another one called Stoplight Loose Jaw, which expanded quite a bit. That one was based around this kind of like rock riff that was essentially this kind of like rock riff. And so I had that riff, and I had this section in like 7/8. So again, it was 2 sections, and then I had this groove thing at the end. So for that one, I added a guitar solo, an actual guitar solo, and then I added like a whole other thing in the middle where basically I kind of like had my drummer improvise some kind of riffs and some fills, and then I like wrote a guitar part over all that. And then let's see what else happened. Then I did a bunch of stacks, like rhythm guitar stacks. So like most of it was just like adding parts here.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. I mean, it's interesting. I just find it the compositional background, how people build tunes. I know for me, I just sometimes I do that. I'll compose something, and then this piece sits around for the verse will sit around for a month or two or something like that. Like there's, and I try to force what's next. So I personally am trying to figure out, okay, I'm not leaving this thing until I complete it, because if not, you got these parts all over the place, and sometimes you put them together and you're like, that doesn't really work. It's kind of a bit of a Frankenstein thing.
Yeah.
So a few questions. So in terms of, say, like you had a bunch of tours planning, right? Sorry, I'm just a little so frazzled from that beginning there where everything was all over the place. Sorry. So you had some tours planned with the trio, right? And obviously with the whole COVID thing. So can you talk a little about like what goes into planning and how does it affect you? Because obviously this is a lot of work and a lot of effort to do these things, and I just want to talk about that.
Sure, man. Well, I'm grateful. I work with a really great booking agent that helps me and does a lot of that stuff for me. I'm still responsible for quite a bit of the work as well, and from another perspective. So we had quite a bit of shows set up for the spring, and then also in the summer, which I'm learning are now possibly going away as well. Yeah, so that's a bummer, obviously, a huge bummer. And they'll be rescheduled. I just don't know when. It might be next year.
Yeah.
I don't know. So, I think my role in all that is I'm still very much like the advertiser guy, like as far as getting the word out about the tours and maintaining the social media for all of it and that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, we had, I don't know how many gigs. It's a lot.
It's a lot. It was a tour. Yeah, it was a tour. Yeah.
It was a tour plus quite a few spot date kind of things, and then obviously Snarky Puppy was supposed to have a European tour that didn't happen as well. So that's been rough. But figure it out.
Well, you've been doing a lot of really cool with the you did a live streams with Snarky Puppy. You just did one yesterday with Charlie Hunter. If you check out Mark's Instagram page or his Facebook page, you're going to get a lot of that information when those things come on, and you can help support you that way, and the musicians, and it's really a nominal fee for some of those things, if I remember right. And
they're all like donation based, so
which is great. Yeah. It sounds like it's such a crazy time, and for everyone, of course, but for musicians, everything just came to a dead stop. And it's trying to figure out ways to keep things going, and I find it's even fascinating, like what I'm doing right now, or a lot of musicians I know are trying to navigate this online thing. And a lot of these things, the technology was not based for music; it was based for speaking. So when there's like the compression on the guitars and all these, and you were telling me this unfortunate story of that you were online with this one, and you logged.
Yes.
Logged in.
I don't want to tell it. I don't. That doesn't need to be public.
No. Okay, I'm sorry. Well, there's easy. It's so easy for things to go wrong, like we saw in the beginning.
It's very easy for things to get messed up.
Especially because even the people who are providing the service, there's all these things that they've not even thought about could be a possibility. Like we want to have 5 acts on in 1 hour, and then trying to switch that around, and then bandwidth and all these crazy things. It's really been. It's interesting. It's frustrating, but I'm excited by a lot of it, just because.
Well, I mean, I bet you by the end of this, they'll have some pretty super technology for this kind of stuff. I mean, if you're a tech person and this is your thing, hopefully you're working on something. You know what I mean? You're working on something like this. So, but yeah, you're right. It's, I'm trying to think. I'm probably the most low tech, dude. I don't know how you're doing all this over there with your space station.
It's magic. Well, I have a lot of help. There's my friend Hermano Bonifazzi, who runs the Umbria Blues Festival. And cool. He has been my online tech support. I thank you so much for that, because he was texting, like, when this doesn't happen, just text me like, everything okay? And what I'm using is, and what everybody's using is open source programs, one called OBS, which is the broadcast thing. And since it's open source, nobody's really held responsible for the thing just not working. It was working perfectly last night. I opened it up, and it's not working. So, there's all that kind of, but what are you going to do? It's all, it's a Wild West in a lot of ways. But all right, so I want to get to some of these questions. I'm going to some great people on here. 5 Watt World. Keith Williams. Oh, do you know Keith? You said, have you spoken to Keith? He's got a great website called 5 Watt YouTube channel.
I don't
Okay,
believe I
well,
have.
he did a really great. I'm promoting myself here too. A video on the Beano record and the history of it. And,
Oh, the
and he asked me
Yeah.
to supply some Clapton-esque guitar playing, which was a ton of fun. So if you guys want to go over to 5 Watt World and check out that video, that was really fun to do. 'Cause such a big fan of that record. I don't know about you, but that record,
This is me showing. I should probably go listen to that one.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, sorry. I know. Is the interview over now?
We're no longer friends. Yeah.
I don't have. I know.
All right,
Sorry.
I'm taking me off screen so I squint and read some questions. Okay. People want to know actually where you're based.
Hey, I wore my shirt. I'm in Fort Worth, Texas.
Now,
This is
when
Fort Worth Sound, where
when we first met, it was through a phone call through Chris at Rocket Pedals. You were
Yeah.
thinking of moving to Brooklyn.
I was thinking of moving to New
Yeah,
York.
you were like, can I? He said, my friend Mark wants to give you a call. Can maybe talk to you about New York? And I think, did I actually convince you about not moving here, or?
Well, no, it wasn't that you convinced me about not moving there. I think you just were very real about the realities of living there, which is why I called you.
Yeah.
It was that was years ago, man. That was like what?
It was a while ago.
Or something? 7
Yeah.
years. Yes, there you go. So I mean, yeah, man, we thought about it, and it was kind of one of those things where a lot of the guys from Snarky Puppy were finding their way up there, and so I thought, well, maybe this would be a cool thing. But things happen. Like we almost did the same thing with Nashville too. It was like
I think I said you probably look at
college.
Nashville more. Yeah.
Probably did. And I called some friends there, and we were closer to going there than we were New York, I think, at the end
Well,
of the day.
I think I said, you were already rolling with a lot of stuff, and it's just it's a beast. I've been here for longer than I haven't, so you just figure your way out, and But if you're just moving here and you already have something going, you're like, well, why? Because the club scene here is diminished. Well, obviously right now, but prior to that, it's they don't make a lot of money, so I think if you've got something rolling, why torture yourself?
Well, I was looking at different options, and my wife was thinking of going back to school to get another degree, and there was a program in Vanderbilt that she was interested in, so we were like, okay, maybe this could be a thing, and then just stuff just happens in your career where you just don't think about that, and you're like, okay, well, this is home.
Yeah.
So we're here. Yeah, and it's great. I mean, it's awesome. The best musicians in the world live here. I mean, heck, Andy Timmons is like 45 minutes that way.
I'm sorry, who?
Really? I can't tell. I can't tell.
No. I should have been. I'm sorry. I don't know who that is. No, Andy's great. Obviously, I've known Andy when he lived in New York. I've known Andy since he lived in New York, which is obviously he's a ridiculous guitar player.
There's a lot.
I'm referencing. You ever watch? I'm a huge British comedy fan. There's a show called Toast of London. Have you watched it? No. And it's about this this actor, and anytime they mention like Benedict Cumberbatch, and he's like, I don't know who that is. I don't. He just doesn't want to admit to knowing anybody that. That's really good. Okay. All right, so let's talk about someone wants to know about your signature pedal.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, man. Well, actually, it was on for pretty much that entire first song. It was on the whole time. It's a overdrive pedal based on a couple different J-Rocket audio circuits. Essentially, where we designed it, they knew the pedals that I had liked, and they were like, okay, well, we can take some of that and mix it with some of this. But what we want to do, they introduced that they were doing a 6-band EQ thing, and I thought that was an awesome idea. So that's what it is. It's an overdrive pedal with a 6-band EQ. And kind of the reasoning behind it was that I do a lot of gigs where I'm using a backline amp that maybe I've never played before, maybe I don't know what shape it's in, this, that, and the other. So I just wanted something that was going to be super flexible. And it also just sounds awesome, even with stuff that I'm familiar with. And that's why we ended up with the 6-band EQ instead of a tone knob, because you can really carve the exact frequencies that you want to get it to blend with your amp and your guitar and with your other pedals.
Right.
I love putting it with other overdrives or fuzz pedals or something like that. That's always been kind of part of my sound anyway, stacking drives. So I wanted something that would work well for that. We might do a second version. I'm not sure what we're going to do with it, if we're going to add gain or maybe add a boost side to it or something.
Cool.
But yeah, it's been really, really good. And I called it the Melody because I wanted to put my name in it somehow without putting my name on it.
Right.
Necessarily. So the M and the L are
I
bold.
see. I got you.
So it's a little clever. And yeah, it's one of those things you can like leave on all the time if you're into that, or you know. But hence also part of the name of the Melody is that's what I use it for.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I mean most of the melodies that I play are with that pedal. You know, especially in Snarky Puppy.
Because you can EQ it properly, cut through the mix, or is that kind of, yeah,
yep.
Cool.
Yeah, that and it just like speaks really well with single note lines and stuff like that. And I don't know, it really works, man.
Can you turn it? I know we can't hear it. It's not in super high def, but you kind of mess with it.
Yeah, so I'm playing for the gear people at home. I'm playing through a Fender. I'm staring right at it, and I can't tell you what it is. It's a what's the little one? The Blues Junior. Good one. Okay, yeah. So like Andy from your guitar shop, and first my clean tone. Right? No, that's a running joke. But first, here's my clean tone. So that's
just on the edge of breakup.
So the pedal, yeah. So I have it set. Almost everything's flat. I took some of the. Now I can never remember which kilohertz it is, but it goes from low, or it goes from. There's like highs, mids, lows, basically. So I've got some of the highs and some of the mids out of here. Here, I'll just turn the gain all the way up so you can hear that. It's not a really gainy pedal. But, you know, it's not totally.
Yeah, but no, it's the right amount of gain. You know what it sounds like, besides your playing, which is great. Over here, it sounds like it's fun to play. It's
very fun to play. Yeah, it has because I don't use a compressor pedal.
Yeah, I can hear it. Yeah.
Really ever. So this drive has that nice little bit of sag or compression, for lack of a better word. I guess
it sounds so bizarre. Like you've been playing for so long. I can kind of hear it, if that makes sense. Like when you're playing, it's I can hear it even over Skype, which sounds what it does. There's just a certain kind of feel to it. It feels like it feels good to play, which is super important.
Yeah, I mean that was the whole thing. Is what they did with the there's what pedals that they base it on: the Blue Note, the Majestic, and the Dude. I think, which are all sort of semi-related in some way. All overdrives are. So what they it cleans up really good depending on how hard you pick.
Which is everything you need. You need that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I can dig in, and I can play.
Yeah.
And play clean stuff without because I don't really mess with the volume not all that much. I'm usually kind of all the way there, and then I just back off how hard I pick. And of course, it cleans up fine with the knob too.
Now, in gigs, are you running a clean amp, or are you running an overdriven amp? What do you?
I run straight clean. Because I put I'm old school, man. I put everything in front of the amp.
Yeah.
Because I've never had this is how I grew up. I never had fancy amps with effects loops and things that cut your hair for you and wash your face for you and do all these other things.
Fancy things like an effects loop.
Yeah, hey man, hey man, listen. No, I just never. So I just got used to it.
We joke. David Grissom was on last weekend, and we were talking about that. He's like, effects loop. Nobody uses effects loops. And it's the same thing.
Yeah,
if you can't.
Because I never. I always got my gain from pedals. I always got my delays from pedals. Right.
And then what's great about the clean sound is that you have the clean platform, use the pedals, and you always have control over everything. And
the thing is, and that just kind of goes to the the way I crafted my sound, it's like I can always bring an overdrive to a gig.
Yes.
I can't necessarily bring a Mesa dual Marshall EVH 4-channel, whatever
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't
of
know.
course. Yeah. I assume when I go to a gig, there's gonna.
I can't. Some people can. That's awesome, but I don't play that kind of.
Well, I assume when I go to a gig, there's gonna be like a hot rod DeVille there. And so,
Right,
okay,
exactly.
it's gonna be a halfway decent clean tone, and what pedal works with that amp, and that's all I'm looking for.
Right. Most of my experience in my life as a career guitar player, that's been it. So that's what I'm used to doing. I mean, heck, man, half those Snarky Puppy live records are like, does it work?
Yeah.
Yes. Roll tape.
Yeah, and people don't know. They're like, oh, what amp are you using on the road? I'm like, I don't know, whatever's there. If you're lucky enough to bring one.
Seriously, some of that stuff was, well, we have this.
Right.
I don't know what we have. This. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, or you get
so,
the oldest amp in the world with the worst tubes, or you ask for a Marshall, and you get like a valve state.
Yeah. You're like, guys, like, well, it says
or an
Marshall,
800. Like, I remember touring with like the rock band. You specifically said an 800. And then you get a valve state.
The 803.
Yeah. It's got 8 in it.
795. What? I didn't have the 800. Here's a 790.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Ivano Icardi, who is a spectacular guitar player in Italy.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, we did the Embryo Blues together. What a great guy. He wants to know, can you talk about your signal chain on the album Things of Nature, from guitar to mix channel Nada? Who mixed it? And sounds great.
Okay. Thank you. It was mixed by Joey Lomas, who is a really great engineer, mix guy here in Texas, who's actually done all my records. Cool. He engineers and mixes all my stuff. The only thing he didn't do was the baritone sessions, but he did things of that nature. We have a really great rapport. He really understands sound and how I like stuff to sound and how I like my guitars to feel and be recorded and this, that, the other. So the signal chain, well, I mean, it was kind of different for every song, but the one thing that kind of we did maintain, the amps it was 3 different amps. It was a Supro Statesman, a Naylor Dual 60, and a Pure 64 Mean Street.
Okay.
And those are all great clean bass amps. The Naylor has a really killer drive section, but I didn't use. I don't know if I used that drive section on any lead stuff. I may have used it on some rhythm. Maybe not on that record. I think on Spark and Echo I used it on some rhythm tracks. But anyway, so the idea was we had 3 amps set up, and then we would run a combination of 2 of them in sort of dual mono, with a 57 and a 421 on each one. And then depending on the part and depending on how we wanted to fit in the mix, we would blend a combination of 2 amps or 1 amp or whatever it was. So that's how we did all the amp stuff. The pedals, it kind of varies on tune by tune. I mean, the melody's on a lot of it. The Guthrie Trap Overdrive is on a lot of it. Delays were mostly my TC Electronic Nova delay. And I think we probably added some stuff like in Pro Tools or something, like a plug-in. Sure. It's I don't have like a couple set things that I always have to do every time. It's always like, all right, what does this particular part need? What does the song need?
Yeah.
I did a lot of it with a lot of the tunes with this guitar right here. I played a PRS 594 on some tracks. I played a Michael Cooling Telly, my other garage Strat. My Ibanez AZ is on a track. It's just flavors. It's my Bocce baritone. Bocce, yeah, he's Italian.
I think you said botched. I'm sorry. I was like, what?
No,
sorry.
No. Bocce, like
I got
game,
you. Okay,
like
it sounded like botch. I'm like, what happened to it? Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, nothing yet. It's still in good shape. I played a Martin acoustic on this acoustic tune and a Fender Dobro thing, and yeah, man, it's not a lot of, it's nothing you can't, aside from maybe like the multiple amp thing. It's all pretty basic. don't have any like crazy secrets really.
No, it's cool. It's just, like I said, Ivano is is a great guitar player. So it's a really interesting question about. Okay, so we have another one from Earl. Where did Earl's question go? Sorry, guys. Okay, when you approached the lead break on Phil Collins' Easy Lover, were you thinking the chord progression or melody, or just open yourself up to improvise freely and let it flow?
All of the above.
I figured that. That's the best answer. Absolutely. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I mean, it's the solo was improvised. I didn't plan that or write it or anything. I don't remember which take that was. It may have been like we did maybe four takes of that. I think we had done 4 takes of that one actually. So I don't know if that was the first take or the 4th take. I can't remember. But I mean, straight up F minor rock balls off, man. Ted Nugent told me that one time. It's a funny story.
Don't tell a story, Ted. Come on. I got a Ted Nugent story too. Oddly enough,
I'll answer the Genesis, the Phil Collins, Phil Bailey question in a second. But I was in the airport with this country rock band, first gig I had out of college. And we were playing a show in Maine, and Nugent was just standing in the airport up against the wall, like I think he was looking at his phone or something. And actually, no, he was probably reading. I don't think he was looking at a phone. I think he was maybe reading a book or something. Our drummer was like, "Hey man, love your music, man," and he just goes, "No." We walked over there, and he was like, "I love your music, man. We're a band. We're from Texas. We're going to play in Maine, do a show," and Ted just goes, "Well, rock their balls off, boys. Rock their balls off." And I was like, "Cool, dude." You're like, "All right."
I got a quick Ted Nugent story too. I was like in high school, and Alcatraz with Yngwie was opening. So that was about 5 years ago, and Alcatraz was opening for Ted Nugent, and
wow.
And my friend was like at some college newspaper. He was a little older, and he was interviewing Graham Bonnet. So I'm like, I'm gonna meet Yngwie, and I'm just fanatical about Yngwie at the time. And he walks out of the bus, and I'm like, hey, and I just said, what I said, we stopped, and I'm like, can I say hi? He's like, no, and just walked away. No, it's okay. All right. So, I mean, at the time I was a little heartbroken, because now I just think it's hysterical, Yeah, it's a great story. And look, in realization, he just woken up on the tour bus. Like I had no idea that, that feeling when you pull into the town and someone's already waiting to talk to you, like, oh, like, I love you, but I just, so now as an adult, I get it. But at the time I was, okay. So then a couple minutes later, Ted walks out, and my friend and I are standing there waiting to do this interview. And he goes, there they are. There's the guys, and we all had long hair. He's like, long hairs. And he goes, throw me the keys to this hog. So he gets the rental car. His friend throws him the keys. He walks over the car, dents the hood, and then gets in the car and drives away.
As you do.
And the other thing was really funny. Like, it was my favorite part of the whole show was we saw Yngwie, and then I moved back to the front, and everybody came up because Ted was, the headliner. And he's got his sweatbands on, and it was hot, So he's like, there's these people in the audience. He takes off his sweatbands and goes, and squeezes them on their heads. I'm like, so.
And they probably love
No, this girl was like,
oh, okay.
like, oh my God, he squeezed his sweatbands on me. All right. So, okay, so no, Derek Bailey, you're talking back to Phil Collins. Sorry, I thought that was a fun.
Oh, yeah, right. So so I was thinking of changes and thinking of just kind of a way to navigate them without totally just playing F minor rock, even though I did a fair amount of that. But, solos like that are fun because you have like 8 bars or whatever to kind of really get something that hopefully is exciting and meaningful and engaging, which I think is short solos are kind of sometimes my favorite. Like I love listening to all those pop solo. I mean, heck, the original on that, the Daryl Sturmer solo on that original is phenomenal.
Perfect guitar solo, yeah.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. So I was like, well, that already was done awesomely. So I think I'll just do something else. Sure. And that's been kind of our mode for these tunes with Martin anyway. It's like we're gonna it's going to be like the original, but not a carbon
Right.
copy.
Yeah.
And so that's why we play our own solos.
So got a few more questions. So Angus Clark, great guitar player. You know,
Yeah, Angus, what's up, man? Yeah.
So Angus was saying, wait, where did his question go? It just rolled. You know, that's right. You guys know each other. You've done some work with it. Okay, you do.
Song
Song Division. Yeah, you do. Song Division is Angus Clark's side other company where he does like corporate events, and I've done them. They're fun, and he's spectacularly good at it. So, okay. You do a lot of loop-based stuff. Do you consciously avoid the looper when you're composing just to force a different approach?
I've only written one song based around the looper.
Interesting.
And it was kind of by necessity in that it was the only thing I had to record myself at the time.
Yeah.
I didn't have a computer with me, or if I did, I didn't have an interface or whatever it was. It can be for me. It's kind of more of like a groove tool. Like I don't do looping like how some people do, where they build these huge events, so to speak. But I mean, it's you can definitely use them however you want. It's never been really a part of my live set. But for me, I just sort of had fun doing small little groove jams. And it's kind of it's a good practice tool too, I think. For me, it's more a practice tool than a compositional tool. Like I'll come up with a riff and then force myself to figure out other stuff I can play along with the riff. You know, so like I don't know, here's a riff. Oh wait, pedal's not even on. That was
all
awesome.
Right. Excellent. It's live. Let's do it live.
I forgot I had. So this is how we talked about how low tech I am. I forgot to turn the other power supply
Awesome.
on.
That was great.
Jeez. Angus is like, yeah, man. That was
yeah,
awesome.
man. I've never calling him again for anything.
Okay. So if I was play it. That was great. This is great television. Yeah. So for me, it's about practicing textures. It's about practicing how stacking chords in between riffs. And that
okay, now
kind of
I just want to talk about what you just did for a minute.
Sure. I'm gonna I have a tendency to roll over my mic.
I do the same thing. I do the same thing with this, and then you wonder why some cables. You're like, why this cable break?
Why things don't work.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
One thing I just want to talk about that you're doing, because the loop was straight on, and people have asked me when you're doing looping. So I noticed you did the same thing. You play the loop for a minute or 30, whatever it is, and then you're in on beat one, and then you're out on beat one again of the end of the phrase. Right. So people often ask, maybe want to talk a little bit about that.
So here's a loop pedal hack.
Here we go.
At least, especially with these TC electronic ditto ones that I use, or really any of them.
Yeah, all of them. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you play into the next bar, it's usually going to line up. I think people have a tendency to stop short and then step on the button. Yeah, you stop short. Play the last note of your phrase, and then step on right on the beat one or whatever beat you want targeted. So play through it. I think that's the big thing that people forget to do is they think they have to stop and step, and then you're never going to be
so
in time.
like if you want to think about it, if it's a 2-bar phrase, you start on bar one, and then you to the play 2-bar phrase, and then you hit the looper again off on the beginning of that second.
Exactly. So I'm going to erase this, by the way.
Hold it down. Wait till light flashes.
Right. So if I'm going to play, all right, let's go 90s acid jazz with our envelope filter. So if I'm going to play this, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right. So if you notice, when I played F the second time, I played it and stepped on it. So step,
Yep.
and it'll every time. Just play it like you're playing the tune.
And that's the thing that took a little bit to get used to. And also just play the groove once or twice first so you lock it in. Don't just start hitting the loop on the first, you don't want to play the groove and I got it in the first one. It never really works. So that's the important stuff.
I just noticed that envelope filter and tri-chorus sound
pretty killer. You said like 90s acid. I grew up. I'm a little older than you, and I'm thinking 70s. That's 70s stuff.
Oh, I was thinking maybe like Brand New Heavies or something. Yeah.
I'm thinking like Charlotte. I'm thinking. I was gonna say, is it? Charlemagne. Was the band? Yeah. No, that's 80s, man. Yeah, 70s. All right. You're a little younger.
I don't know.
A lot younger.
Decades.
Who needs them? All right. Jason Laughlin, great guitar player. Do you know Jason?
Yeah. I saw. We hung out in New York. We saw him play at the Peanut.
That's right.
Place.
The Peanut Place, right? That's right. The first time we hung out in person was at a Jason Laughlin gig at Skinny Dennis.
Killer.
He was, awesome. And you didn't sit in. You wouldn't sit in. You were offered to sit in, but
no, because they were really good, and I didn't want to just degrade the listening.
I did. I sat in and degraded the listening. So
that's good. Sometimes it's just like, nope, they sound great.
Oh, no, that's it. Right. Man needs to know his limitations, right? Like, I'm not going to go up there and do my thing. Yeah. He wants to know, when you play over drum loops, do you create your own, or you just kind of use some set ones? Like, anything like that?
It's a little bit of both. I generally err on the side of creating my own just because it's more creative, I guess, for lack of a better, or fun or something. But sometimes what I'll do is augment them with actual loops. So I'll program a beat on my MIDI keyboard, and then if it needs a little extra flair, then I'll dump in another loop or something. But yeah, the programming is it's a good thing to practice.
Sure.
Just learning where keyboards need to go, and I don't even really get that deep into it, like with different sample sounds and crazy stuff. Like the actual drum programming people do, but I try
get
to
the idea at least, like the
and then you need to change something because you're not locked into a loop.
I'm going to take this moment because we're going to wrap it up soon. Of course, all your records are available on Bandcamp. That was the link you gave. All these are
Bandcamp is good because they support
exactly, and that's what I'm going to say. If you want to help out, you can. So people often ask in this, how can we help out new musicians? So as we said before, you may know Mark, but he makes his living by gigging. And primarily. And there's not a lot of people like, oh, well, the records, and you're not making a lot of money from record sales anymore. And so places like Bandcamp, if you're going to go anymore, ever. Well, it's not 1970, right? Yeah, when people actually made a living from records, right? Yeah. And I think we had this same conversation with everybody who's been on, was Matt Schofield, and they're like, when are you going to do next record? And you're like, I got to save up enough money to get that next record done, that kind of thing. So places like Bandcamp are great if you would go there and you can download it. And you can actually give in as much money as you want, which has really been great. People give. I'm always bowled over by the people's generosity. Which, if you hear where I got the tip jar, which people have been super generous and it's been great. I pass it on to the artists who are on the show, and it's been really cool. And go to Bandcamp and we see that money directly. And you have your jam play, of course, right?
Yeah, that's been a good thing. Because I don't really do a lot of teaching. Like one-on-one stuff. So just because of the way my schedule is, I do some, but I can't accommodate as much as a full-time guitar teacher would do, So the jam play thing is really cool because it kind of takes every little bit of what I do in my quote-unquote sound and breaks it up a little bit into these little segments where you can. Some of it's might be advanced, some of it might be super beginner stuff, but I think kind of the way we've arranged it is so like players of all styles can get something out of it regardless of their ability level. So you only play hard rock and heavy metal, well, the R&B stuff is probably going to be new to you. If you play, I don't even give a billion analogies, but that's kind of the
No, I think
kind
it's
of
a
the
few
way
more.
we put it. Well, if you're only into a specific kind of Bavarian,
Yeah,
poker,
it is.
well, it'll be a
Right,
breeze.
exactly.
You don't even need it.
David Dare Parker, who a spectacular photographer, by the way. David Dare Parker from Australia.
I know that name. Yeah.
He's
Yeah,
well, he's I met him on Facebook, and then someone just kind of reaches out to you, and that's the crazy thing about the world. And I looked on I followed his pictures, and I was like, oh wow, these are spectacular, in the thick of it, pictures of war-torn areas and not great places to be, and he goes there as a photojournalist.
Yeah.
So,
okay. Yeah, what's up,
yeah.
man? My probably going like, yes, you totally know me.
Okay.
Idiot.
But anyway, would you ever consider using a modeler as a fly rig?
I would if I had the right. Yes, I absolutely know David. Okay, first of all, let me apologize directly to the camera because we are working on together getting a festival date out in Perth.
Okay,
together.
you see.
And I was like, I know that. I know. Why do I know this name?
Busted.
This is so bad. Yeah, terrible. So, David, thank you, man. I'm looking forward to coming to Perth, and we're going to do this, and it's going to be awesome together. So, yes.
Awesome.
He's probably
Sorry, but
well, if I still have the gig. I
Cut
don't
with the
know.
pants down. Well, because there's a lot of people come out. A lot of. Yeah. Okay.
No. So anyway, what was I going to say? I probably would if the gig called for it. Like most of the gigs I do, I don't. It just I need a real amp with a pedal board.
Yeah.
But I think if I was doing a gig where I was on in-ears the whole time or something, like I would totally.
Absolutely. Well, we had Angus on, and he does the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, and that's all, axe effects, because it's all in ears, and it's a set show each time, right? I mean, I think for me with the modelers, I know they're great in the axe effects. You have to really know it, and I feel like if you're running it through an amp, it's always going to sound different. And for me, anything that requires a menu, I'm like, on a gig, I don't want to be scrolling. So if it's a set show, then I understand that, yeah.
And it would take me some time to really kind of get into the programming of stuff because the way that I use my Kemper, if I use pedals with it, I just plug it straight into the front of the Kemper, like I do with a regular amp, But I totally get the idea of programming a show on one of them if it's going to be the same every night you're on in ear. So yeah, I would do that. Sorry, David. I hope we're still friends.
Nice.
It's like we were never friends to begin with.
That's hysterical. Okay, I'm just looking for any more questions, and you can just look cool on camera there. Because I'm squinting. Okay, Romano, could you play something for us and give us a hint on how to play, in quotations, good funky?
Good funky. Okay. Play good funky. Well, let's see. I mean, I'm playing by myself, so you probably won't be able to tell as deeply if it's grooving if whether or not I was playing with a drummer or something like that. But I try to maintain some kind of like internal metronome.
Yeah.
I can sort of set for myself. And I'm trying to think, like, if I can maintain good space in between my phrases without having to, here's a good thing that I'll sometimes practice. I'll take apart, like, let's see, I don't know. Here's like a kind of like minor six kind of Prince thing or whatever. Well, the two things I'm thinking of, time, but also like the swung feel of those 16th notes and 8th notes. Right? Now, sometimes what I'll do is I'll try to play that same thing without the scratches.
Yeah.
That's a specific sound, having the scratches in the middle, right? It's also a specific sound to not have them, but I think for me, it's harder to try to do it without the scratches. So, 2, 3, 4. I'll put it back.
But you're keeping that hand going, which is... Right.
playing a little bit of air guitar.
Right, which is important to keep the groove going. You're not just hitting those rhythms.
Yeah, so it's like if I go, it sort of puts me now in a now I want to play like almost like a Latin.
Right, it changes the feel entirely. Yeah, exactly.
Or something, right? So that's kind of cool practice, like, figuring out a way to play a groove without the ghost notes, the right hand, and then with them. But it's good to practice that stuff to a metronome. It's great to practice it to a drum loop. The more you can play it with people, is the best kind of practice.
Yeah. Absolutely.
To really speak the language of funk and R&B and that kind of stuff.
And listening to and learning all the right people, like the James Brown's greatest hits. Like that is so. The amount of stuff I learned from that was what not to play, when to play, and realizing that they might just play the same riff to the whole thing. And repetition is what is funky, really. It's when you hear guys who are just kind of going nuts. Like, that doesn't really.
Yeah, if there's a pattern, there's some kind of cyclical thing.
Yeah.
That's what creates a groove.
Totally.
Yeah.
So any last thoughts? I want to say, first of all, thank you everyone for coming out. I want to, before we wrap this up, thank you so much for being here, everyone. And like I said, if you want to help out Mark, you can go to Bandcamp. We have the tip jar here and forward it over to Mark. And next week on this very time, Joey Landreth is going to be on. So that should be cool. He's going to be singing and some playing. And then we have...
Here, I'll set the bar really low.
You did it, man.
Now, there it is. Now it's all uphill.
So Joey's got it. And then we have
when he gets on the show.
Scott Sherrard is coming up the week after. And we got Robin coming on. Sonny Landreth said he would do it, which is cool. And then Josh Smith.
How might be the time to ask Yngwie again?
I could ask Yngwie to come on. I think that would go for one. Remember when you met me?
Yeah, right. He'll be like, I want to.
Yeah, I know. I would love it.
Well, sweet. I love Josh.
That'll be fun too. Yeah, Josh is a great guy. And so, anything? Okay, so last thing. So you got the new records out. Checking them out last night again, listening to everything. And once again, I'm just so thankful you're on the show. And you're one of my favorite players that are around now. Because what I love is the amount of technique you have, which is just astounding, which it's just great. But I never find it to be ever kind of gratuitous. And you understand tone and musicality and feel and composition. And it's just, you're one of those players that when I first heard you play, I was like, that guy is great. Like that is the package right there. So out of I don't say the newer guys or whatever, there's a few guys that you're doing a great job, man. I don't want to sound like that sounds like older guy. You're doing a great job. Meaning I follow your stuff. It's great. And I also just think that your Instagram and your social media stuff is some of my favorite stuff to watch. It's always really super high quality and great. So.
Well, thanks, Jeff.
Oh, man, sure. And your happy birthday. On Snarky Puppy. It's on the Snarky Puppy page, right? You got to watch this. It's brilliant.
I'm surprised more people didn't ask why I own a Viking.
Okay, I just figured.
Because I'll tell you why. Because my mom is an artist, and she's out of her mind. And she thought that for Christmas one year that I needed this. And so she's like, check this out. Well,
apparently you did.
I was like,
need this.
Right. At the time, I was like, where am I going to put this? And then all of a sudden, I'm like, I'm going to wear this and make a video. But anyway. Jeff, thank you, man. I appreciate everything you're doing.
Thanks.
Lessons and doing all this stuff and playing the shit out of
Thanks,
guitar,
man.
So.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, thanks so much for everyone for joining in and hanging out. Thanks to Phil for moderating as usual. Thanks for everybody who's been helping out with the channel. And you'll start to see the upgrades. I'm also going to start posting more instructional videos along with these. And I've got the lockdown on every Wednesday at 4 p.m., which is live, and continue that. Well, hopefully this will all be over fairly soon.
Might be interviewing a lot of guitar players.
I've been overjoyed at the response. People are like, "Hey, man, I'd love to come on your show." I'm like, this.
Well, hey, there's no reason you have to stop.
No, I'm not going to stop doing it. No, I'm really enjoying it. And it's fun because what I like and the feedback that people have been giving us is really fun. Is, I'm not going to. There's so much great people that you've played with. I just want to talk to you about it, like musician talk, like what stuff that you and I, if we were hanging out, besides talking smack about people we're not going to live. I'm kidding. No, it's just this stuff. Yeah. What are you thinking of that playing?
It's like,
Yeah,
yeah, all those internet trolls, that's actually just me
it's
and
true.
Jeff, just
You got
under
nothing else. It's just
other
pure
accounts.
jealousy. Hey, Papa Stash, Brett Papa's chiming in.
Hey, what's up,
So you
Brett?
have some really great videos with Brett that you guys filmed, right?
Yeah, he's got a killer channel. We did some stuff up in Nashville not too long ago.
I did it. I was there the day before you,
That's-
and then you came the
That's
next
right,
day.
you got
Yeah.
some
So I've
stuff.
got a video coming out with
Yeah.
Brett coming up soon. Well, whenever.
What you guys talk
We talked about cars. No,
Oh,
no,
okay.
it was just kind of fun. We talked about the history of the people who I really love. Like, so talking my influence, we talked about David Gilmour, Eric Clapton, circa Cream, Jeff Beck, and Michael Schenker.
Yeah.
Just in a sense, it's not. I don't play like those guys, and
No, I get
yeah,
it,
it's just
though,
like these are things that I learned from them, and that really informed the way I play guitar. And
You did a really cool video where you were playing some Mike Stern stuff.
oh wow, really? Okay.
Yeah, it was a little while, but I was like, okay.
Oh, I studied with Mike for a little bit, which was
Okay.
and then that's
Well,
and all
I
that
hear it. I hear
all that Charlie
hear it.
Banacus stuff. I was totally crazy about. Charlie Did you ever the Charlie Banacus stuff? Oh, I'll send you a whole bunch of stuff that Mike gave me. Okay, well, just before we go, Charlie Banacus is this legendary teacher who passed away out of Boston, and Mike studied with him. He did like mail correspondence, like you send a tape, he sends it back. Wayne studied with him. And it's this really methodical way of going through approach notes. So, and it's super deep. And then you listen to Mike, who, and you hear it, like, not like, if you'd get that, you sound like Mike. It's just, you hear this, oh, okay. So suddenly the approach or tackling the idea of all this chromaticism becomes much more methodical, and you just practice the exercise. Basically, you go through every arpeggio, through every mode, right? And you do a series of chromatic approach note from above or below. So it's a very methodical way of going through it. And it changed everything, because then I just saw like, oh, there's the arpeggio. And then I saw, okay, well, I can dance around those notes until you get to it, And you can hear a lot of like, it's like, I'm not saying Brecker studied with them or anything, but you hear that kind of, it sounds very like New Yorky, if that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Okay,
like
sure,
because when I said it's because you're talking about guys like Hiram Bullock at the time and Stern and Wayne isn't that way, and I'm all tangled up here. So okay, yes, that's pretty funny. I don't remember that, but it's probably like a very bad impersonation of Mike Stern. So,
Wow.
oh, thanks. Okay, good. I appreciate that. All right, cool. So I will see you guys soon. People are digging it. Thanks everybody for hanging out, and I will see you on Wednesday for the lesson, and then next Saturday morning is Joey Landreth. Thanks, Mark. I'll talk to you soon, man. See you, buddy. Bye.
All right.